Hey, y'all, and welcome back to the next episode or chapter of Mixtapes to Myself. Um, Super excited for this next section because this next section, we jump forward to when Sam is in college. And I will say this first chapter that I'm releasing is very much kind of just my favorite. I love it so much because most of this first chapter is absolutely based on my life. I even did the research. I made sure that I mentioned the right streets in Boston. There will be a lot of author's notes because I love this chapter so much. But this specific chapter is basically just writing about me going to college like 20 years ago. So this one, absolutely, because I loved it, even though it was kind of harder. Like a lot of people that I went to school with, they lived in the city or they dormed, and I commuted for like an hour because it was I think like a 10 to 15-minute drive to the train station, 50-minute train station, 10 to 15-minute walk up to my buildings. But shout out to Suffolk University. Love y'all. I still I love that college. I think it's a great college. I don't know about it now, but back when I went, I loved it. They had cream of the crop professors. I had some of the best professors ever. I loved going there. I learned so much. Um, so I guess we're starting with an author's note. But like I said, welcome back. For those of you who have continued on the journey, thank you so much. I appreciate you. For those of you just tuning in, please check out my previous videos so you know what's going on. So now we're jumping to, what is it, 2008. So we're going to be jumping to 2008 Sam, who we've already kind of visited before. And then she'll be jumping forward, but I'm not going to tell you when yet. It's going to be fun. All right, so let's get started. So this is chapter 14, Sense of Home and Jumping Forward. It was 6:55 in the morning when the train started pulling out of the station. Sam was sitting there, bleary-eyed, and sipping her coffee like 90% of the other commuters on the train. She saw one of the conductors walking into their car. Tired or not, she gave her a smile when she came to Sam and pulled out her pass, which the conductor took and punched a hole in another box. She had figured out that the 12-ride pass made much more sense than a monthly one to save herself some money, but every time they punched a ride, she felt herself cringe a little on the inside. She was down to her last 4 rides, so she'd have to buy a new one soon. The conductor moved down the aisle, and Sam placed the pass in its spot in her wallet and put it in her bag. She pulled out her book and settled in to read for the almost hour-long ride. She was one of the few commuters left at a school that was once known as a commuter school. Now they had built fancy new dorms, and most people either lived there or lived in apartments off campus across Boston. She didn't mind it, though. She kind of loved her mornings now. She was able to sit quietly and read her book while sipping on her coffee and get mentally prepared for her very busy day. Today's book was Persuasion by Jane Austen, which she was excited to finally read. She had gone through the most popular, Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Sense and Sensibility, but now she was moving through the lesser known. And this one was short and sweet. She could probably finish it in a day or two. She wrapped her coat around her and pretended it was a blanket and curled up to read, the sounds of the wheels scraping the metal tracks below her. And my favorite part, author's note, number 1. So the train is absolutely true. I would usually be on one of the first trains out to Boston. The train ride was like 50 minutes, but I kind of loved it. Um, I mean, it was expensive, but it saved me a ton of money from actually living in Boston. Because, like, Boston, its rent now is ridiculous. It was still ridiculous back in 2000, 2009 or whenever, 2008. It was still ridiculous. It was crazy. But I loved the train. I knew all the conductors because me, sunshiny self, said hi to everybody. And so they all knew me because I was there 3 or 4 days a week. Hi, Seiji. Um, but I really liked my train ride. Usually it was really nice. It got problematic when the weather was really bad. There was one Valentine's Day, I don't remember the year, where I lived outside of 495. For anybody who knows 495, you know what that means in the winter. Inside of 495 doesn't get as much snow, outside does. So, Boston, it was just raining. It was freezing rain all day. And Boston streets are not meant for like pouring rain. So, like, a lot of the streets would flood next to the sidewalks. So, I'm soaked to the bone from like the waist down. And then I have a 50-minute train ride. I get home and there's like a foot and a half of snow on the ground. And I'm like, and it was super stressful. And I think like my dad was running late because of it or something. And I was so angry. I was so angry. And he was late because literally he had spent so much time shoveling and then he had to come pick me up in the friggin' snow. So, like, props to him. Sorry. That wasn't very nice of me. I was hormonal and I was wet and I was cold. So, like, happens. But the train didn't really bother me. Persuasion and the book thing is absolutely true, too. And the train, it really pushed me to read more because there was nothing else to do. It's how I got through Gone with the Wind. It's how I got through most of my Austen fix. Now, back to Persuasion. If you have not read it, in my opinion, it is Jane Austen's magnum opus. It is the best story she has ever written. Everybody can come for me. You can fight me on it. Persuasion is her best book. It is short, it is sweet, it is beautiful. The characters are so well thought out. The main character, Anne, is just the sweetest human on the planet. And the whole thing, the ending, oh my God, the ending. I'm not going to ruin it. The last like 20 pages, and I'm no longer really a hopeless romantic, but every time I read that book, my heart melts, my body goes numb, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's just so nice. The ending is beautiful. It's oh, it's such a good book. And like I said, I think it's only like 120 pages. So if you have a chance to read it, please do. It's so good. I mean, please read my book too, even though it's really long. But like, it's her best book by far. But yeah, the train and the book, 100% my life. It was true. So I wrote directly from experience on this one because there were things about my life that I really wanted to add to the book. Like I said, Sam is a fictional character. Everyone in here is a fictional character. But it's my first book. And so a lot of my inspiration does come from my own life. These two things do actually come from my own life. And they're things about my life that I look back on very fondly. Even at the time, like sometimes I didn't like the train because it's hard. You're like 19, 20 years old and you're riding the train an hour there, an hour back, hour there, hour back. It gets exhausting. But looking back at it now, I really loved it. And I thought it was just really nice. Back to the story. When she arrived at North Station, she followed the throng of commuters getting off the train and then started the trek up to Beacon Hill. She always loved when she had to cross Cambridge because as soon as you were on the other side, it was like you stepped into a different world. She always walked up Temple Street with its brick sidewalks and beautiful brownstones on either side. Her favorite part, however, was right when she hit the corner. Sometimes someone would be doing laundry. She knew this because there was a vent that would blow hot, fragrant, fresh laundry air onto the street and when someone was using the dryer. When it was cold, it was wondrous because the warm air was a welcome change to the absolutely frigid polar frozen hellscape that was Boston in the winter. Sorry, Boston. Every other month, she enjoyed it just for the smell. That scent of freshly clean laundry and the idea in her head of someone pulling out the warm blanket or towels and sniffing them. Sam looked at her phone and realized she had a few minutes. Her first morning coffee was long since gone, and she could hear the grumbling in her stomach. And so, considering her exceptionally long day today, she figured she deserved to treat herself a little bit. She went to Capitol Coffee House, a small diner right on the corner from the office, where she had had her work study. She walked in, and a few of the guys greeted her immediately. She waved and smiled back to everyone. She ordered her large hazelnut roast with cream only and a croissant sandwich with bacon, egg, and cheese. Her mouth was watering just thinking about the sandwich, and she waited the few minutes before they handed her the little brown bag and she was on her way. They made the absolute best breakfast sandwiches. And the only thing she loved more than that was their cheesesteaks. She wasn't sure what kind of cheese they were using, but she knew that they always made sure it was practically a viscous liquid by the time it made it to the customer. So they were these creamy, cheesy, salty, savory, magical little sandwiches. Plus, they weren't expensive. The guys were really sweet. And she loved being able to support a small local place in a city where chains seemed to be taking over. Author's note. Again, these are my favorite to record. I love reading my story to you all, but I also love telling stories about like which parts of the story are based in my own reality. Uh, Temple Street. Temple Street is a beautiful street in Boston. It really is. It's like quintessential Beacon Hill. And like all of Beacon Hill is like that. Big brownstones, very expensive. It's where the bougie people live. Way out of my price range. But you hit the corner of Cambridge and Temple. I believe it's Cambridge and Temple. And there was this apartment that had it had a vent and it would just waft after you. And it was so good. Because at the time, my mom was on a no scent kick in the house because one of her friends was sensitive to scent. And so we were not allowed to use like smelly laundry detergent or fabric softener or anything like that. She had like natural alternatives that we used. So it wasn't like completely hellish. But I love the smell of fresh laundry. One of my favorite chores. I hate doing chores. I hate cleaning. I love doing laundry. I love it. Doing laundry here, like, thank God I have a washing machine here. But doing laundry is one of my favorite things to do because I love the smell of my clothes as I put them away. Like, I love the smell. I can't help it. Um, the second part of this author's note is Capitol Coffee House. This is a real place. If you live in the Boston area, go to Capitol Coffee House. I believe they're still in business. When I wrote this book, they were. I hope they still are. They're right across from the Capitol House. It's a small little diner. The guys are the nicest you will ever meet. Now to the sandwiches. The the bacon, egg, and cheese and the cheesesteak and the viscous cheese thing, all 100% true. It was my favorite place to get lunch or breakfast for the longest time because there's something about, like, if you make a cheesesteak or like a bacon, egg, and cheese and you just lay the cheese on top and it's not fully melted, it's good, but it's not good, you know? For those of you who know, you know. They it was like they would chop the, and I make my eggs like this now, but they would chop the steak up and then lay the cheese in and then continue chopping it or something. And I'm assuming they had like a grill top. I worked on a grill top before, so I know. But they would just make sure that all the cheese was completely melted and incorporated in. And then they'd just lay it on the bun. And hot tip for anyone who doesn't know, for any of my Moroccans who end up in America, here's your hot tip. If you get a sandwich, breakfast sandwich, lunch sandwich, any kind of sub, anything like that, you get anything in America and it comes in a paper bag and that paper bag doesn't have grease on it, it's not good. Come at me. It's true. And this was like, and I didn't do it often because it's obviously not good for you. But oh man, this thing was both, their food was just so good. I'm going to add an additional note. This is not in the book, but I had jaw surgery when I was 19, and it was the day after Christmas, so December 26th. Had to get my jaw wired shut for 6 weeks. So I had 3 weeks off after Christmas before I had to go back to school. But then I had 3 weeks in college where my jaw was wired shut and I had to go around like this. It was the absolute worst. Oh, it was so bad. It was super embarrassing. And I was like, again, I was 19. I was so young and so like self conscious. And I was like, everybody. But for anybody who's had jaw surgery, you know the hunger. Because everybody always asks me, what did you eat? I didn't. I was on a liquid diet for 6 weeks. So it was like carnation instant breakfast. I used to drink chicken stock with different hot sauces just to like add flavor to my life, and milkshakes. But if I drank a milkshake, because my front teeth are super sensitive, so I used to have to put the straw all the way in the back of my mouth and just suck it past my molars. But one day I got so desperate that I went to Capitol Coffee House and they had like a cheese and broccoli soup. And I'm like, this might work. Bad plan. Bad plan. What ended up happening is I got most of the soup in my mouth, but then all the broccoli collected across the braces and the wiring. So I ended up looking like Swamp Thing when I smiled. It took me forever to get the broccoli out. And luckily, I was at my work study job and they were all wonderful people. So they just like giggled with me. And like, I always carried a toothbrush because I was there for like 12 hours a day some days. So I was able to get it all out, but it was so bad. Like, oh, it was so bad. But the Capital Coffee guys were so sweet because there were a lot of people when I talked, they would be like, what? Can you speak more clearly? And I was like, no. Do you see this? But they were so sweet. Like I'd go in and I'd order a coffee and they'd be like, "Oh, honey, we'll see you tomorrow." And I was like, "Okay." But shout out to Capital. Capital got me through many, many college days. They brought me so much joy. Oh, if I could go back. I loved them so much. I still love them now. That place holds a very, very incredibly special place in my heart. She walked around the corner to the building where her class was and walked up with about 15 minutes to spare. She was the first one there, so she unwrapped her sandwich and started shoving it into her face. She didn't always eat breakfast, but she knew that getting through her classes when she was hungry was never a great plan. She was just about to take her last bite when her classmates started arriving. It was a small class, so they all knew each other, and Sam was saying hi to everyone as they arrived. She put the last bite into her mouth, crumpled the paper that had wrapped the sandwich, and got up to throw it in the trash can just as her professor walked in. He was a burly guy with large aviator style glasses and white hair tucked below a wool newsboy cap. Today he was carrying his usual briefcase, a plastic Old Navy bag filled with the books and materials he needed. He said good morning to everyone and placed everything nonchalantly on the desk before walking in front of it and leaning against it. He was one of the coolest people Sam had ever known, and that was including her dad, and she smiled at the thought. Thursdays were Sam's long day this semester, with 3 classes and work study in between. Sam was back on the train home by about 6:20, and she pulled out her book and settled in. The train pulled into the station around 7:10, and she walked up the stairs and through the covered overpass into the main station. As she walked out the doors, she looked around and finally saw her dad's car sitting there waiting. She walked over and hopped in, and her dad was sitting reading a book while he waited. She smiled at the similarity between them. They liked getting wherever they needed to be early and always brought a book to keep them company while they waited. He put the book down in the center console and started the car up, pulling into the line of traffic looking to leave the train station. I had mentioned earlier, like I went to Suffolk University. The class sizes, for the most part, were super, super small. Like most of my classes weren't more than like 18 people. I think I was in one like huge class, and that was like Psych 101. So it was like a requirement class that everybody took. So there were like 70 of us or something. Shout out to that professor because she was dope. I don't remember her name, but I remember learning that she was also a figure skater. And I was like, she's actually really cool. Um, Less of a shout out because previously mentioned in my last author's note, my jaw was wired shut. And I'm in the huge class in this huge room. And I'm like, okay, she hasn't asked us to introduce ourselves. I'm going to make it. Last 10 minutes, she goes, can everybody briefly introduce themselves? And I'm like, oh. So I have to stand up in the middle of these like 70 kids that I don't know and be like, hi, my name is Illy. My jaw's wired shut because I just had jaw surgery. It was super embarrassing, but kind of fun in a way. I don't know. Um, but a huge shout out to Professor McCarthy, who was the dopest professor I ever had. Um, I have to, I have to say it, dopest. I'm not saying best. I'm saying dopest because like I can't rank a certain number. Like there are a certain number of professors that I had, and like I love them all in very very different ways, very very different ways. Like Professor Rodriguez, who got me to love Latin American history in like a 10-person class where it was like a 200 level course, but he ran it like a master's level course. Really shot me into college there. Love him. Professor Dushku, I still love you. Went to El Salvador with her. She's dope. One of the coolest people I ever met. Um, Actually, Professor Hannigan, who was, he seemed like he wasn't cool, but the way he taught was awesome. The entire history department, the entire government department. Like, there was like 2 professors that I took during my time at Suffolk that I was like, I do not like. But Suffolk had the best professors. I don't know if like a lot of them are probably retired now. But just a dope place to live, like to go to school, a dope place to work because I did my work study there. I worked there for a little while. Um, yeah. Shout out to professors, all of them. Love y'all. But I only included one because I could only include one class. There's only so much space in this book. I couldn't include all of my stories. Anyways, back to the story. How are classes? He asked, or as they waited. They were fine, she said. Professor McCarthy did a whole thing on history through music, which was pretty cool. Ooh, did he play anything good? Her father asked. Genuine curiosity spread across his face. Have you ever heard of Alice's Restaurant? She asked. Their car ride home consisted of her father giving her the whole history of Arlo Guthrie. They had a long discussion of the overall message of the song, a protest against the Vietnam War and the draft, but also his use of humor in the song and how the pleasant melody masked the very serious message behind the lyrics. By the time they were pulling into the driveway, they were deep in discussion about other interesting music that had been used for political purposes. Still discussing as they walked in the back door, the sleigh bells that hung from the door year-round, making their loud, tinkling sounds. Their conversation stopped as they both simultaneously smelled the air. Sam's dad walked over to the stove to kiss the back of his wife's neck and tell her how delicious it smelled. You were literally just here watching me cook, she said, laughing. Yeah, but I wasn't, Sam reminded them of her presence. She loved how much her parents loved each other, but didn't always love bearing witness to the sickening sweetness. She sniffed the air again and then saw the pot on the stove that her mom was stirring and knew exactly what it was. Her mom looked back and said, spaghetti and meatballs for dinner, and Sam punched the air viciously. Her mom's meatballs were the best, and she was elated at her luck. Too bad Ren is going to miss them, she said before her mother interjected. Actually, she's on her way home now, she said. Something about her Friday class being canceled and her needing to do laundry anyways. Sam felt doubly excited now. Meatballs and her sister in one night? Epic win! She went upstairs to drop her bag off in her room and change into her pajamas. Sam was from a pajama family, meaning as soon as you got home, you removed yourself from the prison that was your outside clothes and pulled off on the oldest, comfiest, most ridiculous pajamas you could find. It was her favorite part of coming home after a long day. As she pulled the college hoodie over her head and her hand reached for the doorknob, something caught her eye. She looked at the calendar hanging next to her door and realized what tomorrow was. Today is May 15th, she whispered to herself as her hand fell away from the doorknob and she turned back to the dresser, staring at the drawer. She went over to it and opened it, removing the 2 cassette tapes that had sat there collecting dust for the last 4 years. She sighed and collapsed in her chair. Tomorrow, she whispered to herself. 4 years ago, her teenage self spent the day in her body. That meant that Sam would be going somewhere into her future, but she wasn't sure where she would be traveling to. She hadn't listened to the tape since she recorded it, knowing that she had very complicated feelings about everything that happened then. Knowing what she did now, she didn't feel the slightest bit bad about kissing Jacob in her future body. Ben had been awful to her for years. It took her a very long time to realize just how toxic they were together. She had grown a lot since then, and her relationship with Jacob was marginally better. She still had doubts about their longevity because it seemed like Jacob would never grow up. But for now, they had a nice thing going. She thought about listening to the tapes again, but she figured she knew what they contained, and it would only add a layer of stress to her night. Another author's note. Hi, Teddy. I told you the cats are a constant interruption to this. So, Alice's restaurant. That actually happened in my class with Professor McCarthy. Um, and he kind of introduced us to the use of music and the importance of it throughout history for like one class period, which was really awesome. So I was introduced to Arlo Guthrie and the idea of him using his like folk style, which is very like pleasing to the ear and calm and relaxed, to express something that he felt incredibly strongly about politically. And to me, that was like super cool. There's been a lot of musicians throughout history who have used their music to protest things that are going on in the country, in the world, in society. And it's not just music, it's artistry, all artistry, authors who are using their books to protest things that are happening. And I think that's a beautiful thing. One of the things, one of the very few things I love about America at this point is the idea that expression of self and protest is inherent in our system, which is so cool. We were built on protest. I'm from the Boston area. We learned the Boston Tea Party, the Boston Massacre, all these things. Like, our country was literally born because we started protesting things, and then we went to war over this protest and said, absolutely not. We are not living this way anymore. We're literally built on freedom of speech and protest. So, like, please use your voices. Use them. Use them wisely. Use them for good. Wrong side, be kind. But quite frankly, like, that's one of the things that I loved the most. And learning about that was super important to me. Second part of this author's note is the meatballs. Oh, the meatballs. Meatballs were very special in my family. We used to go to my auntie's house every Christmas, and every Christmas she would just have a crock pot full of meatballs. That was like a family thing because our family was gigantic. Like, there was no, oh, we'll make a turkey dinner for everyone. No, 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 no. There's too many of you. Like, we're talking, I think it was 6 brothers and sisters total of my aunts and uncles and my dad. And then everybody had kids. And then everybody's kids started having kids. And there were so many of us. So she'd have like easy things, like, again, a crock of meatballs. But my mom's meatballs, because my mom makes the best spaghetti sauce known to mankind. And her meatballs were fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. So, like, anytime, I still remember, like, somebody's birthday, we were sitting and like playing Monopoly, and she made meatballs, and like meatballs were part of our celebration. And it's funny because like we're not Italian, but like meatballs held a special place in my family's heart. So like anytime we had meatballs, and like sometimes it wasn't a special occasion, sometimes it was just I had a hankering, I wanted meatballs. But for sure, if we ever had like a lot of people and we didn't want to put the millions of hours of effort into like a actual meal, we'd just make meatballs. And everybody would get their meatballs and it would be absolutely wonderful. Hi, Ted. He's sitting on my fan. Yes, my baby. But yeah. And in general, like you'll see throughout these author's notes that like 90% of the time I'm talking about food. Like food holds a special place in my heart. And that was brought down to me from my family. We love food. I love good food. Like 100%. Like food is great. But still to this day, every once in a while when I'm like really sad or like having a bad day, I'll make meatballs. I'll make I won't always make like our spaghetti sauce because there's so much involved and like ain't nobody got time for that. I do a lot of like easy sauces. So like using actual tomatoes, either grating them down or just chopping them fine and then just mashing them in the pan as they cook. A little bit of garlic, a little bit of onion, a little bit of basil, coffee. You're done. Um, but yeah, no, sometimes a good plate of spaghetti and meatballs is like all you need in life. It just makes everything better. Let me know in the comments, what's your comfort food? What's the thing that you make when you're like really sad? Or what's the thing that you go and get when you're like really feeling it and you're like, I just need something to perk me up and make me happy? What's yours? I have a bunch, but what's your comfort food? Anyways, back to the end of the story. She walked downstairs right as her sister was walking in the back door. They did their signature hug. Her sister had coined the term shuggle for a hug, snuggle, shake combination. She sat down to dinner with her family and they talked about their days and told stories about what was new. They sat there and watched a few shows and laughed and joked the same as they always did when the four of them were together. Eventually, Sam could feel her eyelids drooping, and she knew that she had to sleep sometime, and whether she liked it or not, the future was coming for her. She went upstairs and curled up in bed, clinging as always to her stuffed puppy. Most people don't know what the future holds for them. But for most people, the future doesn't come so soon, she thought to herself wryly, as she slowly drifted off into a solid slumber. So, y'all, thus ends this first chapter in the next section of Mixtapes to Myself. So, Sam spends a day at college, a very regular day, a normal day. And then she realizes that tomorrow she's definitely going to be traveling, but she doesn't know where. Can you imagine? It's like you knew that tomorrow morning you were going to wake up in your future body. That's crazy. But I'm not going to tell you where she's going yet. You'll have to tune in next week. Anyways, to those of you who stuck around, thank you so much. Please share, like, subscribe. Please comment. I asked a question in the last author's note, like, what's your comfort food? What's the thing you go to when you're the most sad? Anyways, thank you all for joining me, and I will see you next week. Again, remember, Wattpad is released at 7 p.m. Moroccan time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Next on Thursdays. I didn't say the date. That's dumb. And Saturday, again, the next video is going to be coming out 7 p.m. Moroccan time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Trying to stick to that 7 p.m. standard. But thank you all for joining you. I say again, please share, like, and subscribe. To all my subscribers, thank you so much. You mean the world to me. Seriously, like, I think there's 57 of you right now, but it's better than nothing. And it's been a month. only a month. That's a very short time period. Takes a long time to get this ball rolling. So I'm just trying to keep on going for y'all and hope that this takes off at some point. But thank y'all so much. I appreciate you guys. And I will see you next week. Okay. Have a great week. Remember what I always say, lead with kindness, spread some sunshine. And I hope you have a wonderful week. All right. Love y'all. Bye. Da, 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 da.